Welcome to the Duality Way Podcast, where we discuss all things health and wellness related from a professional perspective, understanding the dualistic nature of life. I'm Carlo Gomes.
I'm Martin Brain, and today we're talking about food and mood, how to eat for clarity and not just calories. So, as you know, this is something I love talking about, because you know I love food. So I love the idea of eating for clarity because it implies like an intentional eating, if that makes sense. And I think for me, like this kind of breaks down into three factors, and that would be why, or what are we clarifying? To me, that relates to sort of what you're eating and why you're eating it. So obviously when we speak to that, we're talking to macronutrients and micronutrients. And then obviously, as we both know, macronutrients refers to proteins, carbohydrates, and fats.
Calories.
Where basically you're just trying to make sure that, for instance, the biggest thing that people always focus on when it comes to diets is, do I have enough protein? Do I have enough carbs? Do I have enough fats? And that works if your only goal is to lose body fat or to lose weight in general. But if you're looking to genuinely feel healthier, it's important to also talk to the micronutrients where we're looking at, do I have enough magnesium? Am I having enough iron? Are my food sources providing me with soluble fiber instead of insoluble fiber? And sort of like, you know, there's the whole scientific perspective of everything, which I would love to talk about, but I'd be here for hours, and let's rather not do that. So I wanted to ask you, what do you consider to be sort of like your top three things that you consider when it comes to how you're feeling and how you adjust your eating accordingly?
Well, I'm actually quite a feelings-based person when it comes to having food or even what I drink. You know, so obviously we have a cafe, and the funny thing is, even though we've had this cafe open for 4 months and we work there pretty much every day, the barista still has to ask me what I want to have that day, because there is no rhyme or reason, there is no pattern. What the coffee that I'm having that day is completely dependent on how I feel. Currently, I'm feeling double espressos a lot, but I generally enjoy cappuccinos. I sometimes have Americanos. So for me, it's literally, I cannot even tell you what it is that makes me change my mind, but particularly I just completely change. Like some days I'm feeling this, some days I'm feeling that. I get bored sometimes, which is also why when we were talking about, you were mentioning macronutrients, micronutrients, and all those things. I get very bored. Taste is incredibly important to me when it comes to food. And I really don't like the fact that fitness professionals often skip over that. And they don't realize how important it is for sustainability. You can only eat chicken, rice, and broccoli so many times in a week until you want to vomit. And I really find that it's important to know the calories of your food in a general sense. Know how much half an avo, quarter of an avo, whatever contributes to your macros. No, obviously, because there's only so many different types of foods you can eat. Usually we do have a set amount of things that we tend to kind of fall to. And so it's important to know more or less the calories in those things. But I don't like to count spices. I don't like to count, soy sauce. I don't like to count salt. Like, come on, guys. it contributes minimally. So for me, Knowing generally, and obviously, you know, your heavy sauces that are very calorific, like your mayos, or your very gravy-filled stews or things like that, you've got to be careful of. But generally speaking, spicing up your life is not going to make you fat. So yeah, I just think I like to speak to the sustainability of eating healthy. So yeah, that to me is definitely my top one. Is the sustainability of eating food. So remind me again what your question was. The top three in terms of?
In terms of how, what do you intend with clarity?
What do I intend with clarity? So yeah, for me really it's mostly how I'm feeling that day will pretty much determine how I eat. I am lucky that I am one of those people that also enjoy cleaner eating. So for me, naturally, I will kind of go towards the foods that are cleaner. And I think that is my way of eating with intention, because I think kind of very, what is this food going to make me feel like when I eat it? I'm not the type of person that will eat a whole packet of sweets or something on its own, because I know how that's going to make me feel.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that's entirely true. There are times, obviously, when I will binge or whatever, and I'll feel like terrible afterwards. But it's very few and far between. Majority of the time, when I do make food decisions, it is going to be, how is this going to make me feel later? As someone who is slightly lactose intolerant, I try to obviously avoid milk. Cheese is still okay for me, but yeah. So my decisions are very much based on how I'm going to feel later.
So it sounds like you use a lot of intuitive eating. So like you've spent the time getting to know your own body.
Yeah.
And then using that knowledge, you're kind of aware of what foods work for you, what foods don't work for you. I just wanted to obviously highlight, so my approach to it's a little bit different, but it's very similar. So
Okay.
similar to you, like, you know, both of us have been vegetarian and meat eaters. We've both acknowledged that we're lactose intolerant, but not necessarily listened to our bodies and seen the effects thereof. And then now, so for instance, at the moment I was going through the 2-week cut that I was trying to do for our trip down to Durban, and obviously with that came a lot of very intentional changes that I make. But again, I also still eat the foods that I enjoy, which is similar to what you were saying, where I, instead of having pastas, I'll have rices, for instance, because rice I tend not to overeat.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily about the carbohydrate source or whether or not there's enough fiber or anything like that. I tend to eat based on, am I going to eat too much of this or too little of this? And for me, as much as we do also want to talk to macro and micro, it's also about knowing what your goal is. So when I'm trying to lose fat, I obviously need to not overeat, because I'm not going to lose fat if I overeat. And unfortunately, when it comes to pasta, because I love pasta,
You cannot control yourself.
I will have 5 portions in one go. And that's not going to help contribute towards my goals, so I'm definitely not going to go to a pasta.
Yeah.
But I can still eat the same filling that I would have with a pasta with rice, because rice I tend to only have a small amount.
Okay.
Or I replace it with whole potatoes.
So it's about knowing yourself.
100%, and knowing not only about what works for your body, but also what works for your urges. And so I find, like, for instance, today in that car drive, we shared a packet of speckled eggs, for instance. And yes, it's not healthy, but
The 2 lactose intolerant
but it's
guys.
every now, yeah,
Speckled
and
eggs.
and yes, it's not healthy, but it's an every now and then, and we know it's not going to be the forever. And for instance, we bought 2, we only ate 1. We're not going to have the other one right now for instance. We
No.
will probably eat it on the way home on Thursday, but we're not going to have it right now. And like for instance, I know especially when I'm trying to cut weight or whatever, I know if I'm going to have that and indulge in that, there's other things that I need to sacrifice later, for instance. So for me, intentional eating is also about, okay, I know I'm feeling fatigued at the moment, so I need to try and eat more red meat and or greens so that I can increase my iron levels, because it's probably due to something like that.
Okay.
And so I try to sort of eat according to how my body feels in that way, where it goes down to, am I increasing certain sources of different minerals, but I know my body well enough to generally know if that's going to work for me or not. So I think for me, my top one thing is try new things until you figure out what works and doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's a frustrating process. For both of us, it was more than a couple of years. And even now, I'm sure you found this as well, but my sort of understanding of my body evolves as time goes by.
100%.
There are certain things that I've now realized I've been avoiding for no reason. And there's other foods that I haven't been avoiding because I haven't assumed they're doing anything, that I now kind of go, maybe I should, like pasta, for instance. So that was a new revelation for me, was I consistently seem to break, especially on like one night, I'll just make that into my cheat meal, if we can call it that. But then the other thing is that it's kind of like you have to understand what it does for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So I know that those 5 portions of pasta, it's enough calories for an entire day for me when I'm trying to cut weight. So it doesn't help me because I've now gone and taken what would have been 6 really good days and 1 day of cheating, where again I also don't want you to feel like you can just do whatever you want for the day, but it's kind of like enjoy a meal and have something that you're craving, like speckled eggs or a sugary cereal or whatever, something small that you can have in a contained amount as well. Because a lot of the times what I see people do is they see cheat meal or cheat day, for instance, and they decide, oh great, I can do whatever I want the whole day, and then they eat a week's worth of calories on that day. So for me, that was the thing that I realized, was I was adding day 8 basically onto my meal plan by having the 5 portions of pasta instead of just having the 1. And so I think another thing I wanted to say was, eating with clarity does not only speak to the understanding of yourself and understanding of your urges, it also speaks to understanding your goals. So if you do have a goal like weight loss, for instance, understand what your choices are doing to that end goal and accept it. Obviously, if we fall off the bandwagon, I don't know what your approach is, and I'll ask you for that later, but when I fall off the bandwagon for a day, I don't try and start from 0 again. I acknowledge that I've messed up on this day, and I'll just take it from, let's say we're choosing 20 days, we'll make it 21, for instance. So I just add that 1 extra day because I've only messed up on the 1. But also, as we've agreed on the 80-20 principle within our business, you've got to get it right 80% of the time, and that's going to set you up for success. And if you mess up on 20%, understand what that does. And how do you feel about, so you mentioned you don't like tracking calories, for instance. How do you feel about recognizing, like for instance, when I have my five portions of pasta, I recognize that the calories included in that is more than my allotted 20% for the week, right? And so for me there, I failed the 80-20 principle in that. Do you agree with that kind of approach, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, but I can't really relate to it personally because I'm not someone to overeat. I never have been. In fact, I am someone to actually undereat than overeat.
Okay.
So my issue is that I am a deep hyperfixator. And when I get deep into work or a game or learning something, or whatever it is that I'm doing, I tend to give 100% of my attention to, and as a result, I tend to forego bodily needs and things like that. It's not that I don't get hungry, I do, I just ignore it because I'm like, let me just finish this. So, so because of that, I do tend to undereat more than I overeat. But my solution to that is I really try now to actually schedule in what I need to eat as tasks or when I need to eat as tasks as well. So because I'm a very task-based person and I like ticking things off of a list, I do tend to actually schedule in the things that I'm supposed to do for myself as well. So not only do I schedule my work stuff into my to-do list, but it's my needs. I schedule my needs into it too. Okay. And that for me helps because I'm planning for it. Okay. And if I don't plan for something, I hate for my plans to be interrupted. So it is important for me to plan everything. It's just how my brain works. It doesn't work for everybody, but that's how I account for my failings I say failings, but my shortcomings when it comes to food or when it comes to my needs. So that's how I approach it. But going back to what you said about in terms of experimenting and finding out what your body needs and doesn't need, and realizing that after a while you've been ignoring something or avoiding something because out of habits or not realizing that it's actually something that you don't need to avoid. I was a vegetarian for many years. I think it was about 7 years. And I did it not for health reasons. I actually did it more because I was going through a point in time where my spirituality is very important to me, and I felt that was something that I really needed to do. And over many years, and this isn't because vegetarianism is bad for you, I'm not saying that at all. I think vegetarianism done right can be very good for you. But I don't believe that being a vegetarian or being someone who eats both meat and veg or whatever is good or bad. I don't believe. I believe it's how you do it that makes it right for you or not right for you. Now the problem with me is I like quick food. I don't like to sit over the stove for hours and hours cooking something. And the problem with doing vegetarian right is, generally speaking, it does require a lot more time and a lot more planning. Cooking with beans and lentils and things like that does take time. So getting all of your proteins and stuff like that is very difficult. And also plant-based proteins tend to not be complete. There's very few sources of complete plant-based proteins, and that also comes at a price. And if you're on a budget, to get those complete proteins is quite difficult. And not just on a budget of not just a financial budget, but also a time budget. Yeah. So I didn't do it very well, and slowly but surely over a couple of years I started developing problems. Like I started developing like anemia kind of symptoms. I started getting severe eczema, and that was also triggered by stress at the time, but the vegetarianism helped because I wasn't getting enough omegas and stuff like that, because again I wasn't doing vegetarianism properly. And yeah, so after a couple of years I decided, not to say that my spirituality was no longer important to me, but I realized that for me, spirituality is more something that comes from within and more based on my principles, rather than an act or something I deprive myself of. So because I shifted my perception of what I felt spirituality was, it allowed me to start eating meat again. And then when I started eating meat, those symptoms that I had started going away again. And I felt like I reached another homeostasis in my body. So again, it's about learning what your body needs, and then adjusting to that and just listening, really listening to your body and adjusting to that. So I'm just repeating myself now. So yeah, so that's what I felt was quite important to my journey. And now I'm realizing that I'm actually more lactose intolerant than then meat was actually bad for me. So I find that, but again, even though I started eating meat again, and then I realized red meat actually doesn't make me feel too good. I actually get very bloated when I eat red meat. And I think it's because of its high fat content. I find that if I have too much fat in my diet, I get very bloated. So lean meats for me works much better. So naturally speaking, I just gravitated towards the things that
didn't make you feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
it's all sorry. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's a very important thing to also acknowledge that your needs and your body's needs change with time. I think obviously we notice certain things and we grow as people in terms of our approach to things as well. And so I'm sure you might catch us in a year's time talking about a similar topic and coming at it from a completely different angle. Because that's what we've done even just in the 3 years that you and I have known one another, where sort of our approach to business, our approach to life, and our approach to eating has changed over time.
Yeah.
I mean, and also what worked for us then doesn't necessarily work for us now.
No. Yeah, and I think it's also obviously the topic is food and mood. So when I'm in the mood to eat a food, I'm gonna eat it, But again, like I said, that relates to how I feel on the day. But again, we also can eat for clarity, clarity of mind. I try not to also eat too heavy foods, particularly at lunchtime, because I find that when I do that, then I really cannot concentrate after 2 p.m. and it's I just can't get anything done.
Yeah.
So I tend to rather eat my heavier foods intentionally in the evening. Something wrong?
No, I was trying to tell you guys to wrap it up on the battery.
Oh, okay.
It's fine, I'll cut out that part. You can continue.
Okay. So, okay. So I try to eat my more heavier foods in the evenings when I'm not going to go to sleep. So and obviously that doesn't work for some people. Some people don't eat after 6 p.m. We only close the cafe after 6 p.m. So I'm going to get home at close to 7 anyway. I still got to make food. I'm eating at 7:30. So, I mean,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. I just that's when I'm going to eat. So circumstance also dictates a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that I can't intentionally make decisions that are going to kind of make me feel better. So I'd rather have my heavier food where I know I'm going to feel tired afterwards. I'm not someone that struggles to fall asleep. I'm also not someone that struggles with my weight. So eating after that time isn't a problem for me. So yeah.
That's all we have time for in this episode. In the next episode, we'll be discussing
burnout at work versus burnout in fitness, spotting the overlap.
Cheers, guys.